Power saved the day. Any liability and inability to procure these rights automatically leads to aggression. The modern man is often the pre-sheriff. This folly. It is clear that uncontrollable natural circumstance usually ignitemento. Abuse the use of political power. Thieves a factor occordutoinability to generate new dimension of innovation to meet ever-increasing social projects. Enviously converts the previous outputs of innovative superiority into aggression so to dominating every competitive struggle, the fear of losing relevance generally inform this. Above all, the uncontrollably goof. Man is largely responsible. The caveman probably had no man to fight. Besides himself a costly waste of time, arbitrary use of economic power, which is political by outlook is clearly unjustified as is only motivated to conquer the forces of nature militating against this survival. What serves economic power is idealike its community peers, intangible property like technology or science. The caveman like his generation was a good thinker, highly rational in the use of instincts and trading of mechanistic logics to reason and has no companion besides the ability think. From this study power used generally and most importantly economic power is driven and built on three factors: necessity, liability and technology, and the gap between these factors swells social debt. These factors often create a timely leverage for the mobilization of cultural trinity into effective practice. Nature uses the first factors to fiercely demand for development which when consumed gives birth or rebirth to economic power through exploration of these rights, which in real sense is also the consumption of technology to cover human needs and prevailing liability. As economic power challenges increase, driving the need to survive, human arts might grow lazy and resort to alternative means with the least resistance rather than the usual long-standing and painstaking method of endless flurry of innovation, which by sustainability can perpetually raise the level of living of standard of erstwhile caveman-like attitude and modern man-alike. Sometimes inability to effectively use and mobilize art system leads to abuse of economic power image. Thetopekalon of competitive struggle is dominated by superior economically powerful individuals and advanced nations. Political imperialism is generally oriented on hell tariff greed for unusual economic gain. This climate ordinarily exerts pressure on the power market, threatening the gregarious nature and the living equity of mankind. The caveman had no terrible unlike the modern man. Going by modern old Soviet empiricism, and the formation of Marxist class struggle was wrought by the demand for economic relevance using political power dynasty basically to deceive the people, truncating the communist projected ideals in the long run. Inability to secure the economic gain. Unlike the caveman has jungled the birth or rebirth of competitive struggle which promotes aggression and consequentially nurtures disharmony between powers. Theinquity can be regarded as unfavorable balance of it. Human attempt to resolve the dire effect of this struggle led to the birth of competitive justice, probably the greatest injustice ever wrought in proposed to justice image of humanity, persistently forgetting the ordeal that this fate posed against human welfare. This clandestine guillotine revolution gave birth to the doctrine of ideological struggles purred by power struggle to promote Marxist class struggle in the long run. It cannot be disputed that the practice of trinity underpinned by development ideology goes before the practice of struggle which promotes activity, the sum total of culture, and from this canon follows closely in even preceding it is the observation of GCL. In other words, the practice of this rights promotes enterprise of struggle and thus leads to exploitation of power market, and power market in turn leads to Marxist class struggle is a prelude to observe the GCL framework in the development economy. Backquote, how competitive struggle evolved and competitive JUSTICEPROMOTED In the society of man, only three major classes exist, mainly those who control political power, politicians and the autocrats, those who control economic power, the capitalists or the bourgeoisies, and those that control social power, mainly traditionalist socialists, community that include philanthropists or those that empathically apply the golden rule and the eclectics that floats across the triple classes. They form social oligarch or the separatists leaguer. They can also be regarded as class power triangled capatists. The least and the rest of the people in the underprivileged masses constitute what is regarded as the utopian class. Truly speaking, this class going by the tagtopian never really exist. They control power equation and the rest of the people. Social mass, popularly known as the civil society, clinically brandish utopian right, not fundamental human right which does not exist, despite being in the majority actually do not exist. This terrain is particularly worrying in the developing history. What a weird world. The mentality of subjective followership captivity dominated this class rather than the other side of the divide that can launch revolution and demand for development, possibly transforming their adversity into fortune by maneuvering this fate. That poor use of arts bequeathed to human society, as he compete for control in the power market, the birth of competitive struggle or power. To sling subconsciously and deliberately shortchange the intricate course of societal justice, rather than that true justice finding its natural cause the competed against it or preserve the status quo already dominated by them. The most clement group being the community under intoxicated economic power or easily mowed into depraved yard joining the decadence. Or their good efforts wasted by dining with the devil. Out of this group a philosophical society arose, the scientific socialists, and a country adopted it. Intended to liberate the utopian social mass beginning from their territory. And 70 years later were also intoxicated by political power, inordinate influence and imperial dynasty, and died a natural death, hence contributing to the vicious rise and fall climate cycle syndrome of history. With more historical data to spread this shortfall, encourage the review rethinking. Refinery Andre modeling of Marxism by I'm bibbing some relevant ideals of utopian socialism in addition to refined ideological values of Marxist socialists which can conciliatory evolved or should it be impugned might be the great nemesis of Mencken de Ben Morthenite envisaged and well captured by Neomarxism irrespective of conciliatory conjugation relative to the reality of world affairs. Marxism offers no relief to the transient and soulless human society in which the worship of science has repudiated the essence of the proletariat, that by throwing off the chains of capitalists and capitalism, they have a world to win. Will they observe carefully to understand the difference? Evaniptata. For the fact that socialism recommends work for everybody but defeats the argument that qualpe I salad or that workers' welfare will improve. Under Marxist socialism, the technological productivity pledges increase in the inequality of wages and no insurance against mass poverty. Whereas history had not shown this to be untrue, especially in the fall of late 80s Stowe. Witness the nemesis of the great inequality. This factor appears to be most insurmountable factor in history. By diagnosing the origin of inequality, necessary solution can bring the lasting relief how innovative ability differs and can be manageable in its diversity once social debt is paid for the benefit of mankind. Again we observe, how can gross inequality be avoided? The answer is simple, by paying this debt its undertaker is well assured of golden privilege in history. Without intellectual liberty bequeathed to the utopian class, it became practically impossible to attain in the Marxist world of Marx. An England dented by ideological epidemics and prostituted world of Stalinism. Neo-Marxism is the last saving grace of mankind prior to the dire Outcome of the Great Nemesis. Today social capital of respective countries is increasingly frustrated. In place of social justice the world have competitive justice whose equity is mortgaged for self-interest of the development separatists to the detriment of the utopian class on dean place of meaningful social struggle competitive struggle never see a setosor. Neomarxism potentially by using its auto-run diagnosis can open up and resolve the puzzle towards the attainment of balance of power vital for world total freedom. Bridging the mass divide. Abraham equalitarian curve. The present nature of power triangle community we have admitted inhibits global development and promotes gross inequality of wealth which needs auto rehabilitation reconfiguration and calls for social restructuring. The point is clear. In the community separatists take the saddle and hold sway. This lead can also be regarded as class power triangle, CAPOT, and THE. Utopian hardly exist. A non-social restructuring the community would then be governed by dual class power triangle, Duca-Pot, with the utopians topping the class power bracket once controlled by CAPOT. Had the utopian socialists of the failed 1848 revolution understood this basic framework, could have been more glorious today than Marx ISM. That truth is clear. Revolution is costly the case of power abusing the great Soviets and the disintegration of powers during the Cold War not being needed in this. Restructuring is impractical unless with appropriate restructuring first of the financial system to practice Neomarxism is practical for delinearable fields which is the evidence of the possibility to go with it, it would then trickle down to the socio-economic system at large. The political power shall be placed at the nadir and the remnant powers control the joint middle cause while Duca-Pot top the community for a new global order. To now implement this simple but hardest strategy, the following must be observed as the final solution for mankind in the return to the golden age. Restructure the financial system as a prelude to socio-economic restructuring. Entrench Neo-Marxist Manifesto. Entrench Neo-Marxism and Theno-Marxist free market respectively. And practice dual redistributionist financial system as mandatory. Some nation might need to adopt a mono Neo-Marxist financial system or refined neoliberal free market as optional and is required. Ensure restructuring of the socio-economic system as the dual system matures in the long run. This will automatically self-corrects itself over time. Refine the political system resolving its insensitive framework in the needy region. Sustain and maintain the framework for a lasting result orientation and growth of capital development and civilization sustainability across the divide. The above legal framework OR 7 norms of social equity will encourage enthronement of Duca-Patism to also control the community for a new global order that would eradicate a mass poverty and beginman's journey towards the golden age and evidence of a new sense of belonging for depressed humanity in the global village. If we apply this 7 Abrek salvation formula provided with evidence that Neo-Marxist free marketer dual framework is endorsed after restructuring, an implemented community power tussle would soon become a thing of history. The capo trul must end so as store gain lost harmony and equity in the power market, while class power triangle will be deterred from strangulating the entire community that supported it and exploited by social interest in place of competitive self-interests to work towards universal welfare is the ultimate goal of the neo-Marxist market strategy. It is in the best interest of the bourgeoisie to conciliatory evolve with the underclass so as to have a sense of belonging in the society or else might turn barbarian and overrun the wealth of the superior. That is the essence of neo-Marxist stage laying a foundation to bridge the divide. In the existing or present Toby, old capitist order we found out that there is no place for the utopian class but in the new order they are represented. Having overthrown the capo trulls owes to top the community eventhaw. They conciliatorily evolve with capo touch the substructure and they the underclass is the later superstructure. And economic power no topeth. Apex chart of power community relegating the political power which is meant to serve only to the third place, curbing its aggressive imbecility, as the social power comes second, which is meant to retain top power. Assman returns to golden age in which social interest reigns supreme with economic considerations. Potage golden world machine. The philosophy of the golden age and the golden transition. Potage golden. The welfare of mankind is much more important than the general welfare of those top power market holders and the mighty nations. Otherwise, if the poor still amounts to nothingness, they might soon follow the same relegation to the dustbin of history as global development precedents and universal welfare of humanity transcends the real racial sectarian interests. The world economy will grow exponentially and spread wealth across the board if wedinodeport the peculiarital sandidialism of potage golden opening new pits mysterious and controversial chains. Through Neomarxism, the intellectual liberty of the West is getting stressed and overheated as the quality of human brain outputs reaches saturation levels as civilization reaches the peak. Since economic power is determined by brain power feeding into technology power, it is likely and very sure that brain power will shift to Asia, especially India and China. Bibliocratic symptoms are clear for all to see in terms of software and other technologies in which the former already controlled over 34% of American scientists, an incredible number indeed. It indicates that alien or foreigners increasingly controlled a heavy proportion of intellectual property assets which Bill Gates believed was the engine of American economy. Presently is Ubuntu that territorious brain capacity of its people reaches saturation level, but a far greater disincentive, calamity and destabilizing effect will it be in the long run, possibly engineering the collapse of that great civilization. Although today mayn't know it, now basking in the euphoria of newfound rave of globalization working in the ear favorand, it may be too noisy, too urgesic. A supercilious region being infected by bibliomaniasis torvuits. Immigration policy, as some of its scholars have argued, or at worst practice the German doctrine of Aryan myths expounded by Adolf Hitler. That could also sound irrational, and this indicates that its hands are tied by this nemesis. No existing theory support this, that the rise and fall of brain power is equivalent to the rise and fall of great powers and great civilizations. Emerging markets are very good at mimicking, now they have moved in. It cannot be disputed that the usually spy to send precious information assets back home at best, may even be spying for the development of Indian economy, which is evident in the explosive growth of Bangalore. The Chinese, including 150,000 foreign student populations and thousands deployed by Chinese government, were specialties in this area. Spying on whatever Scientific American does. Hermamicri technology is certainly working, and the best in the world, gradually liberating its people from the pawn of intellectual terrorism of the West, albeit so for Andis haunted in like manner by macroeconomiasis. The observation of the great charters of liberty is usually driven by necessity and liability, and capital development will then circulate to developing history, opening the region to development, beginning with the incursion of bibliocracy through its constitution of development GCL, using brain power to spread information power or technology like the ancients until now. The West may not like it an inch, but it is certainly clear that civilization will continue to shift as brain power and the quality of intellectual power declines informant standard from one region into another territory in the new and ever-changing order. Besides few exceptional cases, this is a fundamental fact in history for all time and can never be disputed. The rise of intellectual export and brain power and immigrant export, which helps contribute to regional brain drain of the developing history is unsafe and insecure to advanced markets and not affordable and calamitous in the long run. It so much costly to their economy, which they ignore brazenly with the delusion of unprecedented prosperity like never before in the history of man. It is therefore necessary for the torch to be passed harmoniously without overheating the environment of power triangle, stopping the abuse of political power, guiding against the rise and fall syndrome of human history. With robust econometric model opening up the philosophy of development. Golden Age Marxism, in their distributionist societies it preaches equalitarian conception of social materializement, reordering moral precedents of political economic history from neoliberalism into the new enclave of neo-Marxist free market economy, that economic rights should pervade every communities of the world and ensuring harmony in the power triangle is a kingly authoritative priority. It is the first philosophical template under Marxism which has been determining the fate of cultural and historical materialism from the prelate history into recorded times and would perennially determine the fate of man and earthly existence, survival, and universal welfare of humanity from the present into the future and the infinity. Under Marxism, the world economy will swing from the neo-Marxist arrangement post-Marxism and finally into development golden age. Neo-Marxism, popularly and roughly known as communism, or post-Marxism, the final doom of man should the last savor of resort be abhorred and the great nemesis off-world, the great Armageddon catch up on humanity who failed to consider the less privileged in their societies in addition to magnanimous burden of overpopulation and the world existence and universal safety at large. These macro philosophies form the holy trinity arms of potage golden with subordinate philosophias under them, beginning with Orander. Marxism Neo-Marxism as the first political economist ideology opens up the mysterious chains of a seem-like controversial pursuit, specially to the skeptics, the never think, well, how shall we escape IFWE neglect such a great eternal salvation that this Nudonis proffering to their solution of man's greatest puzzle. With the benefit of history, it should be noted that this general body template is the broadest philosophy ever propounded by man living or dead without look into thousands of years ahead or even millions as long as the earth exists or remains until the return of this great temple into the Golden Age. It is also the first time in modern times to unify the ideological rivalry of defunct Cold War territories, noting a mixed economic model and a host of relevant models since the dawn of modern age harmonized with unique propositions and the transcendent modelers. New mode of thought's macroeclecticism into a distinct and distinguished philosophy of the Golden Age, Marxism, never before in human history, or potage golden and canals are regarded as the broadest framework of universal global development model. Removing discontents of globalization is prominently noted by Professor Stiglitz among similar studies. It is a combination of philosophic thoughts and macroeconomic models in a single body template opening its floodgate through neo-Marxism for a new world order in the great golden transition towards the Golden Age and the Nirvana. Its first objective is to eradicate global mass poverty and then stabilize the egalitarian order of global economy. Although we have entered the neo-Marxist era, but the neo-Marxist free market economy in which no body will be poor man has no tie it begin. In the golden transition before it, the Chapin cities admitted that competitive rivalry between neoliberalism and neo-Marxism shall take preeminence, flexing muscle once the latter is adopted and global structure created for it. Where it is largely impugned like Marxism and whether separatist Leaguers like it or not, it will definitely be forced into reckoning by nature. Presently the world has no free market economy event how it claimed to be, and the most authentic ever contrived in human history is the base metal of pottage golden. In this free market The power market system poverty is to be alien for the first time in history. And every humanity should have access to equal economic rights osto. Explore their God-giving ability and vast potential even though innovative ability might differ. Neoliberal free market being the most fraudulent free market economy ever in human economic history will surely pass away unmourned. It is a matter of time, and its undertaker is tranquility a major undoing of the feudalers, perhaps shortly after the exit of this competitive rivalry. Neomarxism will begin in full blown, even if abhorred. As long as microfinance escalate like wildfire, it will eventually be forced on the conscience of global economy, and the glory of neoliberalism I fit survives will still be Neomarxism being the first anti-poverty political, economic and egalitarian market ideology in history. It is the most unavoidable fact in mortal history and could be avoided unless microfinance is declared irrelevant in the economy of man. That is practically impossible. It is a great salvation, and shall we escape potage golden and the return of te golden temple. The world was a golden temple, had lived in the golden age before the fall of her great history, and today is a golden desert. Theorenoser. Development ideology charting or turn to the lost glory besides potage golden. The world civilization has matured to chart a new era, an advance road map towards the return. This is the greatest ambition in the history of Homo sapien. This may be little bit crazy. It is vital, and most importantly, to avoid the rise and fall climate cycle of history. Duetto fragility and error-prone brain power and the undue exploitation of power triangulatus harmony by the GDS. That question is, how did it decline is a golden temple? According to legends common to world religious settings, that humankind began in a golden age governed by a supernatural being in which man lived happily goodless and was freed from defilement, no sickness and no death. In the Avesta, a sacred book of the ancient Persian Zoroastrian religion, talks about the good shepherd Thafarim being the first mortal. That Ahura Mazda, the creator, first conversed with, who was instructed to manage the golden temple. He was later mandated to build the underground abode of era full of perfectment. These suffered no sickness, no evil spirit, no defilement, no poverty, and above all no death dwelling. Among the golden pillars and the odoro, fairest trees a tall and beautiful race where no form of imperfection was found. Although the biblical details has the most authentic analysis of this perfect paradise, other chapters of world religions hold similar interpreted opinions. For instance, in the ancient Greeks, the first 5 ages of man, which constitutes the golden age, was noted in works and days, Hesiod. Spoems, a period of universal bliss, perfect freedom, and complete happiness. According to Hesiod, the immortal gods inhabiteth atavistic period of this golden age, and mankind with interdifferences with this peculiar could return to golden age. This shows that the 6th age is the presentage of imperfection and death being the last to be conquered. Biblical references unmasked sciences of evolution. This perhaps has lasted for several thousands of years. With the rise of potage golden world, machina, a new dawn might begin, and possibly man could make a paradise on the earth even before the full return to the golden age, marking the 7th age of man. Thereafter thero toternity begins, and man need not pass as agon into the greater beyond, for this will start right here on the earth. Some biblical sources put the Sigas to be 7 days based on eternal standard. Refer Apostle Peter. Prior to this world machine we donathavaya Philosophiformans Golden Age return and strategic exit from this. Golden Desert. One the other hand Charlier narrated, The Fall of Great History and the legendary Golden Age was lost as a result of poor use of arts and inordinate greed for power political. According to Greek legends, when Epimetheus endorsed and accepted the beautiful wife of Pandora, gift from Olympic god Zeus, who opened the lid of her great vase from which Pandora box of troubles, miseries and illnesses began in humanity. Half a different species of creation, never recovered until this day. It was clear from the beginning that the great Armageddon was guided against and clear evidence that the Golden Age was lost based on this fact of life, and also through abuse of political power, disharmony in the power market leads to moral decadence, crime, dishonesty, unfaithfulness, and from which all other moral shortcomings and disobedience emanated. From if it could happen with the perfect brains and the golden generation, how much worse for a mortal broken bones in the golden desert earth wilderness generation with no eternal home to cover itself except the grave. Efficient use of power, mainly economic power, by man is the very first step to build a paradise and to return to golden age on earth. THEEVOLUTIONOFPOWERTRIANGLE. Community tussle and the crash off. GOLDENAGE. The crash of the Golden Age, based on the Hesiodus poem, was a result of the abuse of political power and can only be restored through efficient use of economic power in the transformed power market. Understanding the necessity of economic power sovereignty would easily pay down the social debt or existing liability confronting human and social development market. ITIs shows vividly that amortization of this debt or liability by the forces of necessity in the optimization of power triangle potentialize the substantido to all human and social predicaments. In the Golden Age, social power is supreme, and thereafter in this age, economic power though became supreme but was overshadowed by political power in the competitive struggle for wealth, relegating social power to the background. Ownership of production, according to Marx, an angle became determinant factor. On the other hand, there are two philosophies that support the human ethics and mass development market. One promotes natural freedom and the other freedom of man. Both Taoism and Confucianism by nature are conflicting with contradictory freedom emphasis. In the ancient China 100 Shulsov philosophy were found, but the most prominent is noted, which have stood the test of time, obviously laid more emphasis on the conflicting nature of this triangle and its effect on the nature of existence. The entire five ages noted by the poet can be regarded as Taoism, and the period of the Golden Desert is the Confucian age, in which man is all owed to explorates cultural trinity uncontrolled. The word Taoism, Daoism, Thawas, related to a religion in modern-day China, actually means the state of natural free domain, which man consumes and never produce, or lying on the fringes of nature, especially what comes out of nature. For instance, by its religious reference, Sid means non-aggression for every want and desire. Hoffman. It means stillness, standing still, sitting still, doing nothing, and relying on what nature gives. Fish Apanet and the legendary tales of biblical Garden of Eden, or some primitive tribes like those noted by Darwin and described in his book The Voyage of H.M.S. Beagle. The Tierra del Fuego, the tip of Cape Horn, is one of the worst and bitter climate in the world, and mantle of seal skin is their direct protection against weather. They have binoculars, because they do not goods to trade with other tribes. They practiced direct production, which hardly practiced anywhere in the world. The Eskimos of northern Canada, the Koma people in Nigeria, the Pygmy in Africa, and the Fuegians of Tierra del Fuego are usually poor, the Yari concerned only with food and provide shelter from what provides Akavi or snow hut or trees. Virtually every tribe and race has passed this stage Before knowledge advanced, the tribes are likely to be killed by the light stored in test piece of hard luck. Darwin found that in hard times, the few gone skilled and ate their old women who were less valuable to their dogs. The first 5 ages symbolized eternity of rest after a long previous eternity of labor had passed and persisted. Unfortunately, the abuse of power triangle of the atavistic period had truncated the golden age, leading to the golden desert. Then man entered into a period of labor again, and vigorous labor of all were mobilized to return to good solid place denominated in meaningful economic activity. Thesis. Known or called Confucianism, far different from its known definition deployed relative to Chinese ideology, which governs the th. 6 Age of Nature. To return to the golden age of philosophical templates, which begin with Neomarxism, will govern evolution of world history for infinity or estimated years to come, to spread the gain of mass development to all. There is no alternative to Mars solithy cages. Chapter 4. The Nature and Overview. MACROECONOMICENBIRONMENT. Idazakum acknowledge that an economy is the vera survival of man, and by sustainability is the capital arts of development. It can also mutually conceded that an economy matures at its own pace based on the development and the structure of its financial system and market functioning efficiently with inherent macroeconomic stability prevailing at a given period. Idas often well argue that a good lubrication of this system can never be possible without the efficiency at which capital is mobilized and optimized as on it. Factor influencing enhancement effective productivity growth. This cannot also be possible without institutional efficiency in addition to labor efficiency. The role of finance in this framework is extremely important, complex and irreplaceable to facilitate and accelerate appropriate economic growth desired by economic agents and nations at large. The mobilization of these productivity factors in alignment to structural and regulatory incentives forms a financial system as economy perpetually evolves and consequently can better serve the public, mainly improving standard of living. That is why in a sensitive climate-intensive study is often extended to the financial and monetary system, which is periodically surveyed and appraised to determine its overall macroeconomic impact. In 1961, the American financial system was heavily surveyed according to Jacob, Farwell, and Neve 1972, whether it was indeed serving the public as well as it might. According to the reports and findings of the Commission on Money and Credit, it concluded that our monetary, credit, and fiscal policies and the instruments and institutions through which they operate must be so designed that they can make essential contribution in the decades ahead to the improvement of our standard of living through simultaneously achieving low levels of unemployment on a adequate rate of economic growth and reasonable price stability. And the more successful way in achieving these goals, the betterable we will better achieve our most fundamental growth, to enhance the freedom and dignity of our citizens, indeed of men everywhere, and to ensure the survival of our country and its system of government. Thus lofty objectives did work today in the U.S. by 1982. Jeffrey Whitehead commented, and quoting Professor Galbraith, regarded American society as an affluent society. That affluence is wealth, and there can be little doubt that Western civilization today is wealthier than any previous civilizations. We have more material things, more useful goods than any civilization before us, 13 years before the Commission inquiry. The GNFWAS estimated to grow by more than 50% to reach close to $1 trillion in 1975 from the previous figure of $600 billion annually in 1965, with productivity growing at astronomical proportion. Household wealth in the 80s soared above $10 trillion adjusted for Inflation had grown over the period 1974 to 91 nearly $4 trillion. Including financial assets and real estate rose from 3.75 times annual disposable income in the former period to 4.5 times in 1991. The combination of housing boom of the 70s and the long economic expansion of the 80s in addition to low inflation and high real interest rates skyrocketed the historical boom in the value of household assets. Today, reflecting the vision of the Commission writing on the golden age of the 90s. Capital market assets in the U.S. ballooned to $50 trillion more tonna. Third of the world. This indicates that strategic vision, national self-critical appraisal, robust policy, effective human capital deployment and most especially the hands of providence including the productivity factors noted usually mobilize a financial system into sustainable growth and development. Hence the robustness of this system determines the strategic outcome of such strategic vision of any nation which has carried the U.S. economy thus far with better economic sovereignty and better standard of living at the top of the world. THEPLACOFCENTRALBANKSINANECONOMY. At the center of this argumentor polemics is prominence of financial institutions envisaged to play a vital role towards capital development of any nation being regulated by central banks worldwide. Evolution of central banking was bedrock to modern commercial banks and the latter also preceded it by cradle. They are controlled by economic necessity and preoccupied with the religion of regulation and control of monetary expansion and discretionary contraction of money supply. Several schools of thoughts have debated and disputed and supported the viability and expediency of central banks in an economy or a nation. ESA. Central bank necessary. Both the free banking and the